Okay, the last type of factoring problem we're going to look at is called factoring by grouping. And we can recognize that we're going to use factoring by grouping if we have four terms. So notice these problems down below. 1, 2, 3, 4 in every single scenario here. So we're going to follow these steps. We're going to group two sets of two terms together. We'll see what I mean by that with the first example. We're going to take a greatest common factor out of each set. And then we're going to factor out the common set of parentheses. And if we can, we will factor further. Some of them we'll be able to, some of them we won't. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Notice we have four terms. So it's factoring by grouping. So I'm going to group together the first two terms and the last two terms. So two sets of two, essentially. And I'll just do it on this same line. I will put parentheses around the first ones and parentheses around the second ones, and you notice I've got a plus sign in between. Now we always want a plus sign in between. In this instance, the plus sign's already there, but we'll add that plus sign if we don't have it. Like in these two, there's a minus sign here. We're going to add a plus sign, but we'll see when we get there. All right, so we've done step one. We've grouped two sets of two terms together. Now we're going to take out a greatest common factor out of both sets of parentheses. So out of this set of parentheses, notice that they both have x's, and the smallest exponent is x squared. So I'm going to factor out an x squared out of the first set of parentheses. So we'll take that x squared out, and I'll be left with, if I take our x cubed, I subtract 3 minus 2, I'm left with an x to the first power right there. And of course, if I take x squared away right here, I have a minus 5. Okay, so now let's go to the second set of parentheses, and let's notice that we can take a 2 out of the 2 and the 10 here. So let's factor out a 2. When we take 2 from 2x, we'll just have x. And when we divide 2 into 10, we'll have 5. And at this point, you know you've done the right thing if both of your parentheses are exactly the same, which they are. So now, step 3, we're going to factor out the common set of parentheses. And our common set of parentheses is x minus 5. So imagine that I yank x minus 5 to the front. Oops, except I can't type. And if I yank it to the front, it is no longer right there, and it's no longer right there. And what we have left is x squared plus 2. So we'll have x squared plus 2. Now, we always check, especially if we have an x squared, to see if we can factor further. But remember that we looked at two-term factoring, and those were differences of squares. And this is not a difference. This has a plus sign. So x squared plus 2 cannot be factored further. This is done. If we were to multiply this back out using our FOIL method, we would get back what we started with. All right, so let's go down here, and actually let's check one of them just so you know how to check. So if we want to check and make sure we did this correctly, we can multiply back again. So we can go x times x squared, well that's x to the third. Oops, except apparently my exponent didn't go off there. There we go. All right, and then if we do x times 2, that will be 2x. And now if I take our minus 5 through, minus 5 times x squared is minus 5x squared. And then minus 5 times 2 is minus 10. And notice it's the same thing we started with, it's just out of order. And of course we can add in any order we want to. So we've done it correctly. Now, you don't have to check every single one of them. That's just how you can, and you can make sure that you're right that way. All right, let's go to our second one, and let's follow our steps. Let's group together two sets. Now, I will retype this one since I have that minus sign there. So I'm going to group together the first two. Oops, got to get out of the exponent there. Now, since there's a minus sign and not a plus sign, I'm going to put a plus sign And when I group together the second two, that minus sign's going to go inside with my 4, just like that. All right, so now let's go to step 2. Let's take out a greatest common factor. I can take an x squared out of the first set of parentheses. It's my lowest exponent. So let's take x squared out. And when I do that, x squared into x cubed, 3 minus 2 will leave me x to the first. And if I take the x squared away from the 9, I'll just have 9 left. All right, now, second one. So let's notice that I got x plus 9 in my parentheses. So I really want what would I have in the parentheses to all be positive, just like this one is. I want it to be x plus 9. So when I look at these numbers, 4 goes into both 4 and 36. But if I want to make them positive, I need to take out a negative 4. So I'm going to take out a negative 4. And let's notice, negative 4 into negative 4 makes a positive x. Negative 4 into negative 36 makes a positive 9. And now I have the same thing in both sets of parentheses. I will yank that set of parentheses out and to the front. And when I do that, I'm left with an x squared here and a minus 4 here. And I'm going to go ahead and write it as x squared minus 4. Now, our previous videos, we did a difference of squares problem. And remember, with a difference of squares problem, we take the square root of that, the square root of that, and we need one negative and one positive. So let's finish factoring this in the final step. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. And I need one factor that's negative and one factor that's positive. And I've got my answer. Now, just note that I've got 3 sets of parentheses here. It doesn't matter what order I put them in. I could put the x plus 2 first for that matter, as long as I have all 3 sets of parentheses with the same signs in them. All right, so let's look at one more of these. Last one, I've got this one here. Let's start by grouping 2 groups together. So I'll put x to the third minus 3x squared in my first set of parentheses. Plus sign in between. Oops, I didn't mean for that to happen. Let me do that again. Well, it's still not wanting to come down from the exponent. There we go. Plus sign in between. All right, now, since that one starts with a negative, I'm going to put that negative, or that minus sign in the parentheses. And now let's factor. So, and this is going off screen, so let me pull it up. All right, so I can take an x squared out of the first set of parentheses. And that leaves me with an x from my x cubed. I'll just say 3 minus 2 leaves me an x to the first. And if I take the x squared out of the second term, I'm just left with a minus 3. Now, it seems like at first glance, there's nothing we can take out of this. But I need it to be an x minus 3, and it's not. So let's notice we really need our x to be positive. We're going to factor a negative 1 out. And this will be a common trick we use in order to get things to look like what we want them to look like. So if I factor out a negative 1, negative 1 into negative x leaves me a positive x. And negative 1 into positive 3 leaves me a negative 3. So notice by factoring out that negative 1, I get that common x minus 3 in both parentheses. I can now factor out my x minus 3. When I yank that out, I'm left with an x squared and a minus 1. So x squared minus 1. Now notice again that here we have a difference of squares in these parentheses. So just like we did with the last one, let's factor further. 2 sets of parentheses. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 1 is 1. And we need one negative, one positive. It doesn't matter what order we put them in. And there we go. And when you put your answers in factored form in My Open Math, it doesn't matter which of these factors you put first, as long as you have them all three with the same signs. In other words, a -3, a +1, a -1, you will have the correct answer.